The morning sun spilled across Maplewood Drive, a neighborhood where everything looked perfect: white fences, trimmed hedges, smiling faces. But behind those smiles, secrets festered. Arthur and Helen Grayson had lived in their little brick home for 43 years. They were the kind of couple who sent handwritten cards, fed stray cats, and baked pies for new neighbors. To them, Maplewood wasn't just an address, it was their life. But everything began to change the day new HOA president Linda Warren took over. Linda was young, polished, and ruthless. She moved in 6 months earlier and treated the HOA board like her private empire. She preached neighborhood standards, but what she really wanted was control. Arthur noticed it first: the subtle hostility. "Helen," he murmured one evening, watching from their porch, "she's got cameras facing every house except her own." Helen, always gentle, smiled sadly. "Maybe she just wants safety, dear." But Arthur had seen those kinds of smiles before. He'd been a police officer for 30 years before retiring. He knew control when he saw it. Then came the letters. Cold, formal, and unsigned. "Your lawn exceeds HOA height regulation. Failure to comply will result in penalties." Arthur trimmed it again, then another letter arrived. "Your mailbox paint is fading. Violation 2. Helen grew nervous. Why would she do this? "We've always kept our home nice." Arthur shrugged, "Because some people like watching others squirm." That night, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed outside. Arthur stepped out with his flashlight. Two men stood by his gate wearing dark uniforms with police printed across their jackets, but something didn't feel right. Their badges were too shiny, too new. "Evening, officers," Arthur said, keeping his tone calm. "Something I can help you with?" One of them smirked. "We've received complaints about disturbances here, Mr. Grayson. HOA reported possible code violations and harassment of the neighborhood president." Arthur frowned. "Harassment? That's ridiculous." The taller man stepped closer, shining a flashlight into Arthur's face. "Sir, step back. We're just doing our job. You wouldn't want this to escalate." Helen came to the door, frightened. "Arthur, what's going on?" The man turned toward her. "Ma'am, go back inside. This doesn't concern you." Arthur's instincts screamed. "Show me your badges," he demanded. The men exchanged a glance. "We don't have to show you anything, old man. You think you're still a cop, you're not." Arthur's hand trembled. They knew his past. "Get off my property," he said firmly. "Now." They smirked, turned, and left slowly, too slowly. One of them muttered, "You'll regret this, Grandpa." Helen rushed to Arthur, shaking. "Were they real police?" He shook his head. "No, and I think Linda sent them." The next morning, he went straight to the HOA office, a tidy room inside the community center. Linda was there, sitting behind her desk, flipping through papers. "Morning, Mr. Grayson," she said sweetly. "How can I help you?" Arthur's voice was steady but hard. "Two men came to my house last night pretending to be police officers. They said they were responding to a complaint from the HOA." Linda blinked, feigning surprise. "Oh my, that sounds terrible, but I didn't call anyone. Maybe someone else did." He leaned closer. "You're playing a dangerous game, Linda." Her smile didn't waver. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Grayson?" "No, I'm warning you." When Arthur left, her expression shifted. Her eyes narrowed, lips curving into something cold. That afternoon, a white SUV parked across from the Graysons' home. It didn't move for hours. Arthur took photos. License plate was covered. Helen whispered, "Maybe we should call the police." "We can't prove anything yet," Arthur said, "but I'm not letting this go." 2 days later, a letter came. "You are in violation of HOA policy for aggressive behavior toward the board. A fine of $2,500 will be issued if you do not attend a compliance meeting." Helen's hands shook as she read it. "Aggressive behavior, Arthur, we didn't do anything." Arthur looked out the window. The white SUV was back. That evening, while Arthur took out the trash, he heard a whisper behind him. "You don't belong here anymore, old man." He spun around. No one was there. But under the porch light, something caught his eye: scratches on his car door, 4 deep gouges. He stormed into the house, furious. "She's trying to break us, Helen. She's using fear." Helen's eyes welled with tears. "Arthur, please just talk to the real police." He did. He filed a report the next day. But when Officer Miller from the local precinct came, his tone was dismissive. "Sir, we've checked with HOA President Warren. She claims you've been confrontational. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding." Arthur's jaw tightened. "You don't believe me." Miller sighed. "Look, Mr. Grayson, you're a retired cop. You know how this goes. No witnesses, no video, not much we can do." Helen touched her husband's arm. "Let it go, Arthur, please." But he couldn't. That night, Arthur sat by the window staring into the dark street. Around midnight, the headlights of that SUV turned on again. It pulled closer. Arthur reached for his old service flashlight, stepping outside. "Who are you?" he shouted. The SUV sped off. In its place, lying at the end of the driveway, was an envelope. Inside, a printed photo of him standing in his yard, circled in red ink, and the words, "Stay silent." Helen gasped when she saw it. "Arthur, this is getting dangerous." He exhaled slowly. "It already is." The next morning, they went to the HOA meeting. The room was full, neighbors whispering, eyes averted. Linda stood at the front, perfectly composed. Arthur spoke up. "Someone sent fake police to our home. We've been followed, threatened, and you," he pointed at Linda, "you're letting it happen." Gasps filled the room. Linda's smile didn't fade. "Mr. Grayson, this is highly inappropriate. If you continue these accusations, we'll have to fine you again or consider legal action." Arthur turned to the crowd. "She's lying, can't you all see what she's doing?" But the neighbors stayed silent. Helen tugged his sleeve. "Arthur, please." Linda folded her arms. "Meeting adjourned. Security, please escort them out." Outside, Arthur's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked old, tired, defeated. Helen whispered, "Maybe we should just move." Arthur looked at their home, the garden they'd tended together for decades. "No, they can't drive us out." But he didn't notice the man in the white SUV parked 2 houses away, camera lens glinting under the sun. That night the doorbell rang. Helen froze. "It's almost midnight." Arthur grabbed a flashlight and peered through the peephole. No one there, just darkness. Then a thud, something hit the porch. He opened the door slowly. A small buck sat on the mat. Inside was one of his old police badges, cracked in half. Arthur's breath caught. How did they get this? Helen covered her mouth in horror. Arthur looked into the shadows beyond the yard, voice trembling but firm. "Whoever you are, I'm not afraid of you." But deep down he was. As the wind rustled the trees, a voice whispered from the dark, almost playful, "You should be." And somewhere in the distance, the white SUV's engine started again. Arthur didn't sleep that night. He sat in his old recliner, the broken badge on the table beside him, the flashlight still in his hand. The clock ticked past 3 in the morning, and every creak of the house made him tense. Helen had finally drifted off, her fragile breathing soft and uneven, but Arthur's mind was alive with rage and confusion. He kept replaying the same question: how did they get his badge? It had been locked away for years in a wooden box inside his study drawer. No one but him and Helen even knew it existed. By dawn, he had made up his mind. He grabbed his coat, tucked the broken badge in his pocket, and headed for the station. Officer Miller looked up from his desk when Arthur walked in. "Mr. Grayson again," he said, half smiling. "You've got more for me." Arthur dropped the badge on the desk. "Someone broke into my house. They took this. I want a full investigation." Miller frowned, picking it up. "You sure this isn't just misplaced?" Arthur's eyes flared. "You think I misplaced a badge I've kept safe for 20 years? The officer leaned back, uncertain. "All right, I'll file the report. But look, Arthur, off the record, you're dealing with some powerful people in that HOA. Maybe just keep your head down for a bit, huh?" Arthur shook his head. "You ever tell a criminal you'll just keep your head down? That's not how I was trained." He turned and walked out, leaving Miller staring uneasily at the cracked metal glinting in the morning light. When Arthur got home, Helen was in the kitchen making tea. "You were gone early," she said softly. "Where'd you go?" "The station," he replied. "They'll look into it." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. Helen reached for his hand. "I'm scared, Arthur. What if this isn't just about the HOA anymore? What if it's something else?" He forced a small smile. "Then I'll find out what." At that moment, a knock came at the door. Arthur tensed. Helen froze mid-step. It wasn't loud or frantic, just 2 slow, deliberate knocks. Arthur peered through the window and saw a man in a dark jacket holding a clipboard. He opened the door cautiously. "Good morning," the man said pleasantly. "Name, Richard. I'm from the Maplewood Enforcement Department. We're following up on a notice from the HOA. It seems there's an unresolved fine, something about a compliance violation." Arthur's stomach dropped. "There's no such department." The man blinked innocently. "Excuse me." Arthur narrowed his eyes. "There's no Maplewood Enforcement Department. Who are you really?" The man smiled faintly. "You should really stop asking questions, Mr. Grayson." Before Arthur could react, the man stepped off the porch, walked briskly to a black sedan and drove away. Arthur watched, fists clenched. That afternoon, he called Linda again. She didn't pick up, so he left a message. "You've crossed the line. You send anyone else to my house, I'll come after you myself." 2 hours later, a patrol car pulled up in front of their home. Helen looked terrified. "Arthur, what did you do?" "Nothing," he muttered. "That's the problem." Officer Miller stepped out again, looking awkward. "Got a call, Mr. Grayson. The HOA claims you left a threatening message for their president." Arthur's laugh was hollow. "So she calls you when she feels threatened, but when I'm the one getting harassed, you tell me to calm down." Miller sighed. "Arthur, I'm just following procedure." Helen's voice broke. "Please, can't someone help us?" Miller looked at her with pity. "Ma'am, unless there's a clear crime, my hands are tied." Arthur glared. "Then maybe I'll make it clear for you." He stepped inside and brought out the envelope with the photo of himself circled in red. He handed it to Miller. "You tell me that's not a threat." Miller's expression changed. "Where did you get this?" "It was left on my driveway. You think this is some HOA dispute?" Miller nodded slowly. "All right, I'll take this seriously. I'll get someone from the county to look into it." Arthur exhaled for the first time all day. Maybe, finally, something would happen. But it didn't. Days passed, no one called. Instead, a new notice appeared on their door, official HOA letterhead. "Final warning, failure to comply will result in property lien." Helen broke down crying. "Arthur, we can't afford this anymore. What if they take the house?" Arthur hugged her tightly. "They won't." But as he looked over her shoulder, he saw something move outside, a reflection in the window. Someone was standing by the mailbox. Arthur rushed out, but by the time he got there, the person was gone. In their place, taped to the mailbox, was another photograph. This one wasn't of him. It was of Helen sitting in her garden, unaware someone was watching. Arthur felt his blood run cold. He ran back inside. "We're leaving tonight," he said. Helen shook her head, trembling. "Leave? Where would we go? This is our home, Arthur." He grabbed her shoulders. "It's not safe anymore." But before they could pack, a loud knock rattled the door again, this time hard and fast. Arthur froze, heart pounding. "Police," a voice shouted. "Open up." Helen gasped. "Real police." Arthur whispered, "Stay here." He opened the door slowly. 2 uniformed officers stood there, flashing badges. This time they looked legitimate. "Mr. Grayson," one asked, "we've received reports of a disturbance. Are you okay?" Arthur exhaled. "Thank God, yes, but we're being harassed by people pretending to be cops. Someone needs to." The officer interrupted. "Sir, please step outside for a moment." Arthur hesitated. "Why?" "Just need to ask a few questions." He stepped out. The moment he did, the officer behind him said, "Ma'am, please come with us too." Helen peeked out. "Why, what's going on?" The first officer's tone shifted. "We received a report that Mr. Grayson made threats against his neighbors and the HOA board. We just need to check that everything's under control." Arthur's chest tightened. "That's a lie." "Then you won't mind coming down to the station to clear it up," the officer said. Helen clutched his arm. "Arthur, please don't." Arthur took a step back. "No, not without a warrant." The officers looked at each other, and that's when Arthur noticed it. The badge numbers on their chests were the same. Identical. His stomach dropped. "They're not real," he whispered. The nearest officer lunged forward. Arthur shoved him back, slamming the door shut and locking it. Helen screamed, "Arthur!" The men pounded on the door. "Open up or we'll break it down." Arthur grabbed the phone, dialed 911. "This is Arthur Grayson, 144 Maplewood Drive. Fake officers at my door. Send real police now." The pounding stopped. Moments later, silence. Arthur looked out the window, the men were gone. Helen was shaking uncontrollably. Arthur, they were going to take you. He hugged her, heart racing. They won't stop, Helen, they'll keep coming until we're out. That night he set up cameras around the house, motion sensors, extra locks. He wasn't going to let them win. But around 2 a.m. one of the cameras pinged. Arthur checked the monitor. Someone was in the backyard near the fence, a dark shape moving slowly. He grabbed his flashlight and gun and stepped outside. "Who's there?" he shouted. The figure froze, then bolted. Arthur chased him halfway down the block before the man jumped into the white SUV and sped off. Arthur got close enough to see the back window, a sticker, Maplewood HOA security. He stood there shaking with fury. The next morning, Arthur went to the county records office. He asked for any documentation on Maplewood HOA's security division. The clerk typed for a while, frowned, and shook her head. "There's no record of a security department, sir. The HOA has no legal authority to run one." Arthur felt the weight of everything sinking in. This wasn't just corruption, it was something bigger, something organized. He returned home to find Helen sitting on the couch, eyes red. "Arthur," she whispered, "Linda was here." His pulse jumped. "What, when?" "10 minutes ago she left this." Helen handed him an envelope. Inside was a single line. "Stop digging or we'll bury you." Arthur's hands trembled. "That's it," he said. "I'm calling the FBI." But before he could, a loud crash echoed from outside, the sound of breaking glass. They both ran to the window. Someone had thrown a brick through their car windshield. Attached to it was another note. This one said, "You were warned." Helen clung to him. "Arthur, please, let's just go. I can't take this anymore." He held her close. "We'll go tomorrow, I promise." But deep down, he knew they wouldn't make it that easy. As the sun went down, shadows stretched long across the street. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. Arthur looked out one last time before locking the door. The white SUV was back, idling under the streetlight. Its headlights flickered once, twice like a signal. Then the engine revved, and the car slowly began to roll toward their driveway. Arthur whispered, "It's starting again." Helen's voice trembled. "What are we going to do?" He didn't answer, he just reached for the phone and froze when he saw the line go dead. No dial tone. Just silence. Outside, the SUV stopped at the curb. The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out, dressed in black, holding something shiny in his hand. Arthur's grip tightened around his flashlight. "Stay behind me, Helen." The figure approached the porch slowly, deliberately, then raised his hand and knocked once. Arthur's breath caught. Because this time the voice that spoke was calm, almost polite. "Mr. Grayson, we just want to talk." Arthur didn't move. The knock still echoed in his ears like a slow heartbeat. Helen stood frozen behind him, clutching the edge of the kitchen counter, her face pale and trembling. The voice outside came again, steady but cold. "Mr. Grayson, open the door, we can make this simple." Arthur whispered, "Don't make a sound." Through the window he could see the silhouette of the man, tall, broad shoulders, something metallic glinting at his side. Not a gun, something else. A device? Arthur's pulse raced. Whoever this was, he wasn't here for conversation. Then came a sudden click. The man lifted a small radio to his mouth. "Front entry secure, moving in." Arthur's heart slammed against his ribs, moving in. He rushed to the back door. "Helen, go upstairs, lock the door behind you." "No, Arthur." "Go," he barked, his old commanding tone cutting through her panic. Helen hesitated, then ran, her slippers pounding up the stairs. Arthur turned back toward the front, his hand shaking as he grabbed the baseball bat from the umbrella stand. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then the door burst inward. Arthur swung, the bat connected with the intruder's arm, sending the radio flying. The man grunted but didn't fall. Arthur lunged again, but the intruder caught the bat mid-swing and shoved him hard into the wall. Pain exploded down Arthur's side. "Stay down, old man," the man hissed. Arthur coughed, trying to focus through the pain. "Who sent you?" The intruder smiled faintly. "You already know." Then headlights flashed through the window, another car pulling up outside. The man swore under his breath. "You're lucky tonight." He ran out the door, vanishing into the shadows as the SUV sped off into the night. Arthur stumbled to the porch just in time to see the taillights disappear down Maplewood Drive. Helen came running down the stairs, tears streaking her cheeks. "Arthur, are you hurt?" He nodded weakly. "I'm fine, they're gone." But his hands told a different story, trembling uncontrollably, his knuckles white. The next morning, real police cars filled the street. Officer Miller stood in the living room, looking grim. "You're telling me a man broke into your house and claimed to be part of HOA enforcement?" Arthur nodded, said they were moving in, he had a radio, he wasn't alone. Miller rubbed his chin. "We'll review your security footage." Arthur pulled up the recordings, but when the screen flickered to life, the footage was corrupted, static and black lines. "What the hell?" Arthur whispered. Miller frowned. "Looks like someone disabled your system remotely. That's not amateur work." Helen sat quietly on the couch, clutching a mug that had long gone cold. "We're not safe here, officer. Please, can you protect us?" Miller hesitated. "I can file a report, but protection orders take time. You could stay with family for a while." Arthur shook his head. "We have no family left nearby." Miller sighed, closing his notebook. "I'll be in touch if anything new comes up." But Arthur could see the truth in his eyes. Nothing was going to come up, not unless he forced it. That evening, Arthur drove to the edge of town to a small diner where old cops sometimes met up. He found an old friend there, Frank Delaney, a retired detective with more gray hair than patience. "Jesus, Arthur," Frank muttered after hearing the story. "Fake cops, surveillance, threats, this sounds organized." Arthur nodded. "I think Linda's running something bigger than an HOA, maybe using it as a front." Frank leaned back. "You got proof?" Arthur hesitated. "Not yet, but I've got a name, Richard, claimed to be from some enforcement department." Frank pulled out his laptop. "Let's check it." He typed for a while, then frowned. "No Richard in any county or private security record," but he turned the screen toward Arthur. "There is a Richard M. Keene listed as consultant for Maplewood HOA, retired security contractor, ex-private military." Arthur's gut twisted. "So she's hearing mercenaries now." Frank's face darkened. "Arthur, you need to get Helen out tonight. Don't wait for paperwork. These people don't bluff." Arthur stared out the window, the neon diner lights reflecting off his eyes. "I'm not running, not this time." Frank sighed. "You always were stubborn, at least take this." He slid a small flash drive across the table. "It's got a contact, FBI field agent named Cooper, owes me a favor, call him tomorrow morning." Arthur took it. "Thanks, Frank." As he left the diner, the night air felt heavy, electric. He didn't notice the dark sedan parked 2 spaces over. Inside it, a phone buzzed. He met with Delaney, a voice whispered. "Follow him home, make sure he never makes that call." When Arthur got home, Helen was in her robe, standing by the window. "I couldn't sleep," she murmured. "Every sound outside feels like them." He hugged her gently. "It's almost over, I'll fix this, I promise." But just as he said that, the lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Helen gasped. "Arthur." He grabbed the flashlight and checked the breaker box. Everything looked normal. He stepped outside to the side yard and froze. The main power cable had been cut clean through. A whisper of movement came from behind him. He turned the flashlight and saw 3 figures in black standing at the edge of the yard. Helen screamed from inside. "Arthur." He shouted back, "Stay upstairs." The men started advancing. Arthur ran back toward the porch, but one of them threw something, a flashbang. Light exploded, his ears rang, he fell to his knees. Through the haze, he saw one of the men grabbing Helen by the arm through the front door. She fought back, crying out his name. Arthur forced himself up, half blind, staggering forward, let her go. The man holding Helen turned, and Arthur saw his face under the porch light. "Richard." Arthur lunged, swinging the flashlight into his jaw. Richard stumbled, but the others rushed in. One of them shoved Arthur hard against the wall, pinning him. Richard spat blood, eyes burning. "You should have listened, old man." Arthur gasped. "You're not getting away with this." Richard leaned close, voice low. "We already have. The HOA owns this street, the cops, the board, everything. You're the only problem left." Helen screamed again as one of the men dragged her toward the SUV. Arthur struggled, adrenaline surging. He slammed his elbow into the man's ribs and broke free, charging toward them. But before he could reach Helen, Richard pulled a taser and fired. Arthur's body locked, pain shooting through every nerve. He fell hard onto the pavement, vision going black. Helen's voice echoed faintly, terrified, desperate. "Arthur!" Then silence. He woke up hours later on the floor of his living room. The sun was rising through shattered blinds, his throat burned. "Helen," he croaked. No answer. He tried to stand, but his legs shook violently. The house was trashed, drawers pulled open, papers scattered. Her purse lay on the floor, phone missing. Arthur fell to his knees, gripping the couch. "Helen," he shouted again. Then he saw it, a small piece of paper left on the table. It was HOA stationery. "If you want her back, stop fighting. Sign the property transfer, 24 hours. Arthur's whole body went cold. He read it again, disbelief turning into raw, shaking fury. They'd taken Helen. He looked at the old photo of them on their wedding day, her smile, his uniform, both of them so full of life. And now these people had the audacity to think they could use her as leverage. Arthur's hands clenched, his fear hardened into something else, purpose. He reached into the drawer and pulled out the flash drive Frank had given him. He plugged it into his laptop and opened the file, Agent Cooper's contact information, along with a local field office address. He picked up the phone and dialed. When the line connected, a steady voice answered, "Special Agent Cooper." Arthur's voice was gravel. "You don't know me, but Frank Delaney said to call. My wife's been taken by people pretending to be police. I think it's connected to the Maplewood HOA." There was a pause, then Cooper replied, calm but alert. "You're saying the HOA is running a false law enforcement operation?" "Yes, and they've taken my wife to keep me silent." Cooper's tone shifted. "All right, Mr. Grayson, stay where you are, don't contact them again, we're on our way." Arthur exhaled, gripping the receiver tight. For the first time in weeks, there was a flicker of hope. He looked toward the window. The sun had risen higher now, painting the street in gold. But beneath that light, the white SUV was back, idling quietly at the curbs like it had never left. Arthur's expression hardened. "Come for me if you want," he muttered. "I'm done being afraid." The SUV engine revved once, then fell silent. And as the morning breeze rustled through the broken blinds, Arthur whispered to himself. Arthur sat on the edge of his couch, his hands clasped together, the morning light spilling across the room. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, the only thing still working after the power lines had been cut. He barricaded the front door, though he knew if they wanted to come back, they would. Every sound made him tense, every shadow felt like it was watching. His phone vibrated, an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered, "Hello." A calm voice spoke. "Mr. Grayson, this is Special Agent Cooper. I'm a few blocks from your location. We're monitoring the situation." Arthur exhaled. "They have my wife. 24 hours, they said. I'm not waiting that long." "Mr. Grayson, listen carefully," Cooper said firmly. "We've been tracking a series of false law enforcement operations in several neighborhoods. If you're right about this HOA, it's part of something much bigger. But if you go in alone, you'll jeopardize the rescue. Let us handle it." Arthur's grip tightened on the phone. "You don't understand. These people are ghosts. The local cops are useless. The neighbors are scared. I'm not going to sit here and do nothing while she's out there." A pause, then Cooper said quietly, "Just don't do anything rash. We'll move soon." Arthur hung up without replying. He stood up, opened the drawer under the coffee table and pulled out a small metal box. Inside was his old service revolver, polished and loaded. The badge beside it was cracked in half, the same one they'd broken and left on his porch. He stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "One last time." By noon, he was parked across from the HOA office, a sleek glass-fronted building that looked too expensive for a suburban committee. Through the tinted windows, he could see Linda Warren sitting at her desk, typing, calm, untouched. Arthur's blood boiled. He walked inside, his steps echoing against the marble floor. Linda looked up and smiled as if she'd been expecting him. "Mr. Grayson, you look tired. I was hoping you'd come." Arthur's voice was low and shaking. "Where, Helen?" Linda leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. Safe for now, but you've caused quite a mess, Arthur, we tried to warn you. You sent men with fake badges, broke into my home, kidnapped my wife, and you call that a warning. She tilted her head. I call it enforcement. The HOA exists to maintain order and you became a problem. Arthur stepped closer. You don't get to play God in this neighborhood. Linda's eyes gleamed. Oh, but I already do. Do you really think Maplewood is just a community? We have contracts, Arthur, deals. Every homeowner here signs away more than they realize. Property rights, access to security footage, emergency authorizations, it's all legal. You're lying. Am I? She said softly, pulling out a folder. She opened it and slid a document across the desk. Your signature, from when you refinanced last year, buried in the fine print. Arthur stared down. It was there, his own signature, under a clause authorizing private compliance measures for the HOA. His chest tightened. You forged the rest. Linda smiled. We didn't have to. He grabbed the paper and tore it in half. Where is she? Linda sighed. Arthur, you're making this worse. She's safe at one of our partner residences. If you sign the property transfer, she'll be returned immediately. No harm done. Arthur's eyes burned with anger. And if I do? Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. Then you'll never see her again. He stared at her for a long moment, the polished desk, the fake smile, the scent of power and corruption. Then quietly he said, you made one mistake. Linda blinked. And what's that? You didn't check for surveillance. Her smile faltered. What? Arthur stepped back. I've been recording this entire conversation, and right now it's being streamed directly to the FBI. For the first time, Linda's composure cracked. You're bluffing. Arthur shook his head. Try me. Before she could respond, the glass doors burst open. Two men in black suits entered, not the fake ones this time. FBI, hands where we can see them. Linda froze, her face draining of color. Arthur turned to see Agent Cooper himself, tall, steady, and watchful, leading the entry. Within seconds, the agents surrounded the office, confiscating files and computers. Cooper approached Arthur. We got everything. Live confession, documented threats, forged legal authorizations. You did good, Mr. Grayson. Arthur's voice cracked. Where Helen? Cooper nodded to one of his agents. We tracked her signal. She's safe. We found her locked inside a warehouse 15 minutes from here. Paramedics are with her now. Arthur's knees almost gave out. He grabbed the side of a chair, breath trembling. Is she? She's shaken but alive. Arthur closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. For the first time in days, he let himself breathe. Hours later, he stood outside the county hospital. The setting sun painted the sky gold and red as Helen stepped out, wrapped in a blanket. When she saw him, she broke into tears and ran into his arms. I thought I lost you, she whispered. Arthur held her tight. Never, not while I'm breathing. Agent Cooper walked up, a faint smile on his face. We've arrested 6 people so far, Linda, her security contractors, and 2 board members. There'll be more once the evidence rolls in. You were right about everything, Mr. Grayson. Arthur nodded slowly. It wasn't just about us, was it? Cooper shook his head. No, these HOA operations are popping up across multiple states. It's extortion hidden under bureaucracy, but thanks to you, we have our first real case. Helen took Arthur's hand. Can we go home? He looked at her, then back at Cooper. Home doesn't feel like home anymore. Cooper nodded knowingly. We'll put you under witness protection for a while, somewhere quiet. Arthur managed a tired smile. Quiet sounds good. A month later, the Graysons moved into a small cottage near the coast, a far cry from Maplewood's manicured perfection. There were no rules, no meetings, no letters on their door, just the sound of the sea and the cry of gulls. Helen tended a small garden behind the house. Arthur repaired the fence, his hands steady again. For the first time in years, they felt free. But freedom has a cost. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Arthur sat on the porch, reading the newspaper. The headline caught his eye. HOA scandal exposed. Multiple arrests after fake police operations across the country. He smiled faintly until he saw the last line of the article. One suspect, Richard M. Keene, remains at large. Arthur folded the paper slowly. Inside, Helen was humming softly in the kitchen. Everything was peaceful. Too peaceful. He stood up, scanning the quiet street. A single car drove past, its headlights sweeping across the yard before disappearing around the bend. Then, in the fading light, he noticed something on the fence post, a small, silver badge glinting in the setting sun. He walked over, picked it up, and turned it in his hand. It was the broken police badge that had been stolen from him weeks ago. But now it was fixed. Polished perfect. His heart pounded as he looked around, the shadows long and silent. "Helen," he called softly. Her voice floated back, calm and unaware. "Yes, dear." Arthur slipped the badge into his pocket, eyes still scanning the darkening street. "Nothing," he said quietly, "just thought I saw something." He turned back toward the house, but as he reached the porch, a voice whispered faintly from somewhere near the trees, low and mocking, carried on the evening wind. "Miss me, Grandpa." Arthur froze. The wind rustled the leaves, and for a moment everything went silent again. Then the sound of a car door closing echoed in the distance, and the faint hum of an engine faded into the night. Arthur looked down at the badge once more, the reflection of his weathered face staring back. He whispered to himself, half in fear, half in defiance, "It's not over. This ends today."